Hello, everyone. To some of you, good afternoon. And to some of you, not in this room, good morning. Before we officially start, we're going to do a little pan around. So if you would all wave so that the people who are in all the other places can see you. Thank you for your presence today. We are grateful that Livestream offers the opportunity for many of our sisters and associates from Tucson, Portland, Western Nebraska, Des Moines, Detroit, Jamaica, Messina, and Omaha to participate in this beginning introduction to the ideas and decisions of the Congregational Chapter. Sharing the experience of the chapter and implementing the chapter recommendations will be an ongoing process. The Congregational Council will lead us in this process, and we will all be involved as the process moves forward. The UK and the FBCC communities will also be having similar meetings to the one we're having here. Not today, but at some time. So we would like to begin our day with prayer. Lisa?
So let's just take a moment to quiet ourselves and remind ourselves that when we're in one another's presence, we're in the presence of God. We gather as community, hearts of gratitude for the wonders of all creation. Grace us with the ability to be intentional as we share thoughts, concerns, and hopes for the community, congregation, and especially for all of creation. May we be mindful that around us nature graciously cares for itself. May our meeting today and our future planning take on what the season of autumn has to teach us: compassion, fragility, and the capacity to change. In the Northern Hemisphere, nature bids farewell to summer's heat and colorful bounty. The leaves of the trees turn, fall, and cover the earth. All that was vibrant and alive dies onto itself. The trees cast their nutrients to the earth from its foliage, blanketing the ground, compassionately caring as it strips itself to become what looks lifeless and barren, and yet never stopping itself in giving way to adapt what is next. Creation knows that it is creating the dawn of a new day. Creation knows the future is not what remains in the old, but one that is being created and moving forward. May our hearts and ears be open to life ever changing. Amen.
Good afternoon. So it's my job to give you a few highlights from the Congregational Chapter and also to talk some about the goals for today. So highlights from the Congregational Chapter included the opening address by Sister Mary Trace, presentations to the chapter over 3 days, table sharing, lots of it, and total chapter discussion. And also then a big piece of this was visioning for the future of the congregation. Through this process, we identified 3 characteristics descriptive of our congregation, and then arrived at a unanimous vote on directions and recommendations to guide us over the coming 5 years. In her October letter to the communities, Sister Chantal Marie, Congregational Prioress, asked us to focus initially on the characteristics and chapter directions, which is what we're going to do today. The characteristics identified as foundational to our congregation are compassion, fragility, and capacity to change. 3 of the delegates to the chapter will speak about each characteristic and describe how it relates to the corresponding direction. The exact wording of each direction can be found in the material sent in preparation for today's meeting. After the presentations, we'll have a break, and then the delegates will welcome any questions and clarifications you may have. We will have a closing prayer then and concluding remarks, and following the live stream, you're asked to spend some time in your various areas to discuss 2 questions posed by the Congregational Council. So as you listen to the presentations, please keep in mind these questions. 1, what inspires you in the chapter directions? And 2, which of the 3 characteristics, compassion, fragility, and capacity for change, will be the biggest challenge to you personally? What inspires you in the chapter directions? Which of the 3 characteristics that you'll hear about today will be the biggest challenge to you personally? So, Sister Margaret Stratman will offer information now on the characteristic of compassion and the corresponding direction. Following her presentation, Sister Nancy Marsh will present on the characteristic of fragility and the corresponding chapter direction. And then Sister Mary Geringer will present on the characteristic capacity to change and the corresponding direction. Margaret?
So what I'm going to share with you are just some remarks on compassion as it emerged in the congregational chapter. You know well that we are called servants of Mary, and our mission is to manifest God's compassionate presence in our world. According to our mission statement, we do this, first of all, by centering our hearts in love for God, and then by welcoming all with hospitality, sharing healing and hope with others, and by living joyfully. We do not do this alone. We are reminded in our constitutions that Mary, who walks this journey with us, helps our love to grow to the dimensions of her compassion, enabling us to continue to reach out to the poor and the suffering wherever we encounter them. The Congregational chapter of 2019 reinforced this core characteristic that identifies us as servants of Mary. The chapter document on directions and recommendations beautifully states that our charism of compassion expresses the passion that gives us energy. At the heart of this characteristic is relationship. So it is our relationships that hold our passion, allowing us to attend to the needs of each other and respond to the needs of our world. And in the process, our gifts, talents, and resources are generously shared. And as we all know so well, this giving is reciprocal. Anytime we give, we receive so much more. The chapter document especially encourages us to continue to share our compassionate care across the congregation and with all of our sisters. And I think a very good example of this is how the other communities of the congregation made it financially possible for the American community to host the 2018 assembly in Omaha, at which almost all of us were present. The chapter also encouraged us to bring our loving attention to wherever there is local or global social injustice, especially in our care for Earth. You might remember at that 2018 assembly that each community shared what the social issues are for them in their countries and how they are addressing them. And we are further encouraged by the chapter document to cultivate greater unity in the congregation by collaborating in the areas of finance and formation. And in regards to formation, we here in Omaha are being very blessed at this time with the presence of two of our Congolese sisters, Constance and Monique. Our keynote presenter at the chapter was Elena Lacida, a professor of economics at the Catholic Institute of Paris. She began her sharing with a common French expression, "The house is burning," meaning our world is falling apart. She went on to share what she believes we can do about this. And her bottom line throughout her sharing was that our world needs a serious change in values. One change involves moving from the value of independence to interdependence, both as individuals and as nations. Everything, all life forms on this planet are related. Nothing is truly autonomous. Everything is somehow connected to everything else. And I think we're starting to see some of this in various stories about climate disasters. Relationship is the primary source and reality of all life. Along with this, everything has its own unique value, be it a person, a pig, a potato, or a pine tree. Everything. And so we must move from using everything for our own material well-being to treasuring everything for our relational well-being. Another needed change of values, we must come to understand that the whole is greater than its parts. We need each other. We are more together than we can ever be individually. And it is the very process of relating that makes us more. Our doing with others, which Elena calls our alliances, building alliances, doing with others enriches us and transforms us. And we must come to believe that unity is better than conflict. We must value the we over the I. We can do that when we are willing to learn from each other about each other. We can do that when we expand our contemplation in prayer to contemplation of persons, contemplation of the other. And so, in Elena's rich insights about contemplative relationships, transformative alliances, and generative interdependence, she was really inviting all of us to deepen these expressions of our call to be women of compassionate presence. Nancy?
In preparation for today, Mary Chamberlain and I both wrote a short reflection on what fragility meant or means. And then we emailed it to each other, and then we FaceTimed about it, and then it was my task to kind of weave them together. So you're going to hear my voice, but it's really a combination of Mary Chamberlain and I putting our thoughts together. Here we go. Normally, when I think of someone or something being fragile, I think of being vulnerable or easily broken or being dependent on others. And obviously, no one likes being vulnerable, easily broken, or dependent on others. Yet, if we are open to its possibilities, it can strengthen our understanding of those who are marginalized and come to accept them as fellow pilgrims on earth. Elena Licita inspired us to see fragility as a positive characteristic, something entirely new. If everything is perfect, there's no room for creativity. This reminds me of the potter at the wheel in Jeremiah 18. When the vessel came out wrong, he would start over and make it into something completely new. Our world needs transformation. As a congregation, we can use our influence to transform attitudes toward our earth and the most vulnerable who need our compassion. Elena described fragility as a source of life because it allows for the growth of a relationship of interdependence. A few examples of fragility seen in a positive light helped me to understand this concept. For example, as we become fewer in number, new opportunities have presented themselves. The first total congregational gathering in the summer of 2018 is one example. During that gathering, new relationships and new ideas were formed. Also, the flexibility in our new government structures is another example of creativity in the light of diminishing numbers. Shared resources, people, ideas, finances, and technology are all opportunities for living interdependence in a new way. The crisis facing our earth is another example of fragility and how it is an invitation to come together as one human family. No longer can we live with the idea that our resources are infinite. We need to recognize that no one part of the human family can solve all the issues related to the climate crisis. It will take creativity to find ways to help our earth heal and to be made new. It will take creativity to find ways to make our congregation new, using the gifts of each one of us, including our Congolese sisters and associate members. The crisis is a call to work together across borders and cultures. Aging can also be looked upon as a blessing of fragility. I know. In the aging process, a person can become less about doing and more about being. Age reduces the ability to act, but increases the ability to be present. In Laudate Si, Pope Francis says that what gives quality of life is not access to material goods, but access to relationship with others. Listening and being present to another are critical needs in our society today. And I'll end with just one more unexpected, at least for me, aspect of fragility, and that is loss of certainty. We may hear people grieving that things are not like they used to be, and fearful because what they will be is not clear. A loss of certainty gives one the opportunity to see things in a new way. It offers the opportunity to do things differently, and this can lead to growth. Other perspectives help me to recognize my own lack and need for others, and so I can be grateful for my interdependence with them. Elena also presented a new way of imagining the vows. I was intrigued and look forward to that discussion sometime in the future, because obviously we can't cover all the material at this time. Thank God. These thoughts are just a brief look into one characteristic named as foundational to our congregation. I have come to look at fragility both as gift and challenge. Recognizing fragility as a positive characteristic certainly provides us the opportunity to move from I to we in all aspects of life. When I recognize my own fragility and that of the congregation, I can more easily identify with the fragility of the world. What inspires me as we continue to explore the chapter directions and recommendations is the challenge to move outside of our comfort zone, to engage with others who may be different from ourselves. This outward thrust to live in right relationship with each other and the earth gives me hope that we are contributing to the dawn of a new day.
Hello, everyone. Very much of what has been said obviously is very interrelated. So many of the things that I'm going to highlight, you've heard to some degree and you've seen in the minutes from chapter. If you recall, the theme of the chapter was, "This is the dawn of a new day. The future is not a place we're going, but one we are creating." And I believe it's that last segment of the theme that really talks about or enhances this direction on a capacity to change. The direction itself beautifully states, "A capacity for change has been present from our beginnings in Couves and continues to influence our evolutionary journey. Today we aspire to live as one congregation, irrespective of our borders. This desire opens us to increased intercultural understanding, acceptance and integration, as well as continued flexibility with government structures." Thank you, Val. Val was the one that directed or wrote what we had all talked about, and she did a marvelous job. I'm just going to highlight some of the things throughout the chapter that spoke of this capacity to change, and there were many, and I'm just highlighting some of them. And my thoughts are also Ginny's thoughts. She and I worked together to prepare this. The whole concept of the capacity to change corresponds with seeing something new, which the other two speakers have talked about. We're looking at how do we take what we have today and see something new in how we need to live tomorrow. We began with Mary Therese's opening remarks, and these included change in the structure of our congregational groupings. She said, "How do we see the congregation and how do we see the frontiers of our communities based on our numbers, our age, and the ability to participate? Could we not look at changing the frontiers of our communities?" Oh heavens, what a concept. What if we looked at a community in Europe, a community of North America, and a community of the Congo? Oh my goodness, could we possibly do that? We've always been a province, et cetera, et cetera. We have to start looking at things differently because we are changing. We are becoming smaller. We've already begun this with linking with Jamaica. Could we not do this in other ways? For example, could Canada be connected with the US and Jamaica and be a North American community? Could the UK and France and Belgium become a European community? The answer is, of course they can. Are we free enough to allow things like that to happen? And therein lies the rub. This is a good time to begin to reflect on what might be possible and practical in the future to ensure that there's a possibility of new life in each community and so that leadership isn't overburdened. We all have to take a look at that. Right now, the sisters in France are having a difficult time determining who will be in charge of their community because of their numbers and the inability for many of their sisters to take on a leadership role. That's going to happen to all of us. Elena Liceta used a lot of information from Laudato Si Evangelii Gaudium, and New Wines and New Wineskins. And she showed how these writings are very applicable to us today in society, in religious life, and particularly to our own congregation. For example, Laudato Si describes the security as preparing yourself to welcome the unknown. And this involves creativity and a lot of risk-taking. Everything can't be just because we've always done it that way. When she spoke of the vows, and Nancy hinted at this, she really opened us up to a different way of thinking. She talked about seeing things in a new light, and I can't go into all of it right now, but just some highlights. She spoke of the vow of obedience as a vow of interdependence. Living interdependently helps us achieve our charism, she said. Poverty is a vow of freedom and communion. This helps us to be in relationship with each other in a different way, in a new way. Pooling our goods means acknowledging that what we have truly belongs to all of us. We go again from the ours to the greater ours. Chastity means that we have chosen to live every relationship we have as an act of creation, wanting something new to be born, not trying to control one another, but enabling others to be who we are truly meant to be. Elena shared that our small numbers now can allow us to move somewhat easily into creativity, to give us that breath of life into the something new that needs to come forth. During the chapter itself, the delegates talked about their ideas to strengthen the alliance between and within our communities, as well as considering what new alliances we want to build outside of the congregation. She asked the group to consider how we make sure that the new structures of our congregational governance becomes a place of alliance for us. Working together outside of the community. Our new constitutions are very flexible, and they were written that way on purpose. We had our own process of discernment. Every community is taking their own process of choosing their leadership. Another strong alliance for us, of course, is our connection with, our support of, our support from our associate groups throughout the congregation. There's room for us to approach things as needed by each community. Each community has the freedom of saying, this will work for us, and this is how we need to move forward. The Congolese sisters had time to share with us at the chapter, and it was wonderful. All four of them sat, and they responded to a number of different things. Particularly, they highlighted the last paragraph of an article that was in the chapter handbook, and the article was Intercultural Life as a Sign of Prophetic Hope. And Constance, Monique, Marie Emmanuel, and Marie Elizabeth were a panel that spoke with us. Again, just some highlights. They talked about their hopes for the future and the ways of the how alliances among all of us could really be strengthened. They're speaking as a newly formed community that's ready and eager to be a viable part of the total congregation. They have a strong belief that since they are now full-fledged members of the congregations, it's time for them to have a member on the congregational council. Their history of religious life is different than what many of us have experienced, simply because they are younger than we are. So they didn't have the pre-Vatican experience that many of us went through. Not all of us, many of us. But they're rooted in the charism. They're rooted and eager to move into the future as one, not just the sisters in the Congo, but as one group, as part of the congregation. As has been stated, Elena recognized that we have three common elements related to our identity as servants of Mary. compassion, fragility or limits, and the capacity to change. Based on what developed in the chapter regarding these elements, a chapter mandate was developed. The chapter discussions, in particular the chapter proposals, were all incorporated into the mandate that you have in front of you. So if we just quickly take a look at the recommendations that came from this particular direction on the capacity to change. These were some of the directions that the chapter suggested that the council look at within the next 5 years. The council is not limited to these, but these are some of the main issues that came forth in the chapter discussions. To use the flexibility of our constitutions to reconfigure the communities in our congregation. As I said before, there are many ways that could be done, but it definitely needs to be taken a look at this time in our history. We need to continue to evaluate how effectively our government structure supports congregational unity. To evaluate the progress being made on this chapter's directions and recommendations. So let's move ahead and address the recommendations from the chapter, but continue to evaluate them and see, is this working or is it not? How can we change it? What other suggestions do we have? And to consult the community in all of those, and to get the ideas and the information from the people who are living this out. So this is just an overview of what it means for the capacity to change, but in it of itself, it is a major, major issue that we all need to deal with as our local communities, as our U.S. Jamaica community, and as a congregation as a whole. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Margaret, Nancy, and Mary. That's a lot to think about. We're going to take a break now, 15 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll welcome your questions and clarifications. So it's 25 to 2 our time. Not sure what it is your time, but let's come back here at 10 to 2. 10 to, that's wrong, isn't it? No? Okay, 10 to 2.
Very natural. Very soft. You did a wonderful job.
Pardon me? No, I'm getting chatter, shall we say. Looking good from Florida. We're with you from Canada. We're on in Detroit. And one comment says, we like your hair. That was very good. Your hair, don't cut it. Well, because of my neck, I've not been able to cut it. I had said to the people of
She's
Florida,
doing a lot of
my hair's
feedback, so
getting
it
kind of
must be
long.
going up there and doing well. So it's good on her.
I mean, I think he still can, because it still is going up and down the stairs. If now he's choosing. But anyway.
Besides your good ear.
Carrie, retreat starts with you on Wednesday. Yeah, I'm meeting with them. Oh, okay, but you're Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm Saturday.
Never ends. Your family is bigger. Sometimes it's, when you just marry one person, it's an easier process. If they're willing to wheel it through. If somebody doesn't think they're going to be right. But it's the same deal. Sometimes the function is to move on. You finally move on it instead of talking about it. It's an action. Then you find out if it's the right one. The peons are breaking down your door. You know, you push the wrong way. Everybody knows something. Everybody knows something. No, there's always something somebody knows we don't know.
We have some on our own table.
No, he wasn't here. No, he wasn't here. I thought there was a time going up the road before but I wanted to pull in a lot the club of life. I hope I just fall over one day and nobody finds me for 4 hours. So I'm dead by the time they get to me. There ain't nobody putting me in some machine somewhere. It's getting me alive. I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go. Yeah.
Jerry, you could have it tattooed across your chest.
That would kill me.
That's what my dad was gonna do. He was gonna put a big sign across his chest where he put the paddles.
Do not resuscitate.
I mean, then for sure, you know, people would know.
Yep. But you never know when you get to the hospital what's going to happen. Yep. And when you're out, anybody can make decisions. I've been there once. So, I was 50. I should have died. I ate bad enough and took care of myself bad enough. The things that people feel at 80, I was feeling at 35 and 40. I was punching like, when I got sick when I was 50, I was punching about 12 aspirin down a day. Because I was eating so bad that I hardly slept. Just running light. I was hauling. Oh, you got a wife, you got a job, and by the time I got to the end of the day, I wasn't doing enough for me. And finally, endocarditis, but my immune system crashed. Oh yeah, between the ages of 50 and 60, is probably the years I was the most healthy. I started eating. I started cheating on the food again and stuff like that.
We'd have to start visiting mathematics.
I'm not one. I know when you pull back. I can feel it coming up. I'm more in tune with what things get me. Plus I got to move out. I was going to that part. Somebody was running there.
I don't have to get up to 7.
I've had a heart murmur since I was born. I don't want to be people and getting heart valves, mechanical valves.
I have to stop living at the
I've been long days. My valves
I enjoy it. That's the problem. Like today, I didn't take it. I just put the pecan roll.
I didn't think I'd live this.
At a time. Oh, no, that's a good idea. Oh, I think I like it. That would require that. Yeah, it sure would be. Because I still got it.
Pretty good, really good.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I put a full day in yesterday, I was tired. Yeah, they all depend on
I try to walk
and they say that. My wife said, I'm gonna die in the middle. She said, 9 months my computer won't work. As long as we get some tea.
I've got one right here in my pocket. Did you have something in my pocket? I carry Kleenex all the time. I also want to get up and then I try to go for a walk. Like yesterday, I could do I'd rather be so what I did, thank you. One day, I was the boys. You would say, well, I
Cover your mouth all up.
she's that one. Go get her. Oh wow. Oh, I it's all filthy, no matter where you go. I have, where I am, yeah, as far as salads and stuff like that.
It's almost 10 to 2, so can we wander back to our places? All right, I think we're all back. We're all back in Never Never Land or wherever we are. All right, so here we are. We can submit questions or clarifications. And the people in outlying areas, if you have a question or clarification, please text to Lisa. And you got the phone number when Lisa sent out her email to you. So. And if anyone here has a question or clarification, please raise your hand and I'll bring the mic to you, and then we'll try and see if the delegates want to answer, or we will. Any? Oh, yes, and I will repeat the question, yes, so we get it on the.
So I remember when I was doing vocations work, you tell people our charism is compassionate presence, which it still is. So what do we say? We're compassionate presence, but we're fragile, we're open to change. What are we going to do with those words?
So the question is, what are we going to do with the words that we've tacked on to our identity? We have compassion as our charism, but we're also talking about fragility and capacity to change. So what are we going to do with those extra words? So do any of the delegates or any of you want to respond to that? And when you respond, you do have to come up here so it can be videoed. Well,
okay, my name is Bernice Mahalik, and I'm an associate in the Detroit area. And just after listening to the definition of all three words, I think what we need to do as far as associates and the sisters is to take the meaning, bring it home, and even make it part of our faith sharing somehow. Because I remember when we were talking about fracking, and I was at one of the meetings, and I had very little knowledge about it. But I've learned so much more today. So I think what we need to do is take what we've learned about fragility and compassion and whatever and put it into action. I'm not sure how, but I think we can do it, really. You know, it takes a village.
Right. We're not tacking these new words onto our charism. Our charism remains compassion. But the extra words, fragility and capacity to change, are other words that describe us. From the kind of the sharing and the reflecting of the delegates at the chapter, and Elena kind of coalesced all that discussion together and came up with those words that describe us. So we do have to unpack it, and we will as we go along. We can't do that all today, but and I think Bernie's idea is really good, to take it to our small communities and talk about these words and talk about what they mean to us and what we can do moving forward. Other yeah.
I agree. We're not adding these to any of our documents, except, that kind of thing. But they're realities that we have to deal with, not just in community, but in the world. The fragility of our world, especially with climate change, and then change, the capacity to change. We do have that capacity. How are we going to do it? So they're just realities that we have to grapple with, I think. And, of course, compassion, always. We have to grapple with that, how we do that.
Other questions? Oh, Nancy?
I'm not sure this will add a whole lot, but I think the movement from being independent to interdependence is huge. We have to do that personally. We have to do it as a community. And as I tried to express, it's been a gift kind of in disguise. I mean, I wouldn't choose to be fragile, but we can find a gift in it.
Are there any questions coming in from out of Omaha?
So Sister Rose sent this text. Great presentations, all three. Brought back positive memories of the chapter. Would like a copy of each. Can we commit to using this method to continue sharing at this critical crossroads of our congregation? You probably don't have an answer for that one. Sister Rose Chang.
We certainly can commit to continuing the process in some form. This is an ongoing process, like Jackie said, and we will continue to unpack the chapter as we move forward over the next years.
I think it's a lot like Margaret said about it's dealing with the reality both in the world and in the community. So if I were still vocation director, I wouldn't be saying our community, our charism is fragility. But the reality that we have to face is that, and the sharing and face sharing or other, that's how we unpack that and come to the reality and not avoid it, I guess, those two things or three things. Compassion's been there, but we need to look at the other two, and maybe we need compassion to look at them, both for ourselves and for each other.
Thank you for your presentations. I really appreciated them. I know when we receive these on email, I looked at them and I go, yeah, okay. But it wasn't until today and unfolding some of these that I started to realize that these recommendations, they're not just for fragility. I mean, the recommendations under fragility, the ones under compassion, they're just not those. All these recommendations goes to all three of them. I mean, it just, to me, it just dawned on me today that compassion, fragility, and capacity to change aren't three things. It's all really one thing in maybe different directions. But, and so when we talk about recommendations and come up with ideas, I think whatever recommendation idea we come up with is going to fit for all three of those things.
Right, and it's important to remember that the instructions that we receive from the Congregational Council for today were to look primarily at the characteristics and the directions. We're going to spend time looking at the recommendations and talking together about how to implement them as we go forward. Anybody else? Any thoughts? The three presentations today will be available on YouTube, and Lisa will send out information as to how to access them. And also, we're going to put them into, concrete paper form too. So if you want a paper copy of their presentations, we'll have that for you. Anything else?
We saved a few minutes on the agenda for Sister Monique and Sister Constance. And before I bring them up, I just want to tell you a story about them. They've heard this story before. When Monique and Constance flew from Portland into Omaha, Carrie and I picked them up. It was about midnight. We got their luggage, got them in the car, and Carrie said to them, "Are you missing home?" And without blinking an eye, there wasn't a nanosecond between the question and the answer, Constance said, "We are home." And truly, they have lived that every day. And they have taught us that we truly are part and are one home. So we've asked them to share with you a little teeny bit by introducing themselves and sharing a short message with them. I would have to say it is absolutely amazing how quickly they have learned English. They have been in the United States since July. So, Monique and Constance.
Thank you, Sister Jackie. Hello, everybody. I'm Sister Constance. I'm from Congo, as you know. I have 10 years of vows, first vows, and on these 10 years, I have also 4 years of final vows. And I just finished my studies in medicine, general medicine, and after when I will be back Congo, I will start my internship. Thank you. This moment of speaking and sharing with you is also a moment of testing my English. I would like to say a word, just a short word, about our experience here in America. We are very grateful for this welcome we received from each sisters and associates, proof of the love caring for us. Thank you again, and thank you very much for this time spent together. Our experience in America opens us to many opportunities. It allowed us to learn how American sisters live religious life. We have discovered how to live compassion in various facets of life. It enriches our experience, starting from that what we already live in Congo. We hope that through our internationality, we will discover a lot the beauty of our charism, which is to love more one another. This experience of living with our sisters in various countries helps fulfill the desire of our congregation for increased unity and mutual care. We hope many more sisters from Congo will also have this experience, not only in America, but maybe in England, in France, in Jamaica, in Canada, and other countries in our congregation. In brief, I guess I have achieved my goal or my purpose, not only in learning English, but also experience of the Savites life with our sisters, our American sisters, and also it's a period of break and rest for me after 8 years of studies, a time of personal spiritual resource and interiority of my life as a Savite of Mary. Now, it's not a dream, it's a reality to know the sisters and names of all of sisters I had met in America. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this moment. My name is Monique from Congo. I have 4 years of vows the first. My words are, I think if I repeat the words of Sister Constance, it's not a problem because the spirit is one. The first, I say thank you for welcoming. Sister Jackie said we are home. The second, I see my sisters are close of suffering people, and they work a lot for our congregation. And they meant the love fraternal. I feel the love from you in my life. Another, you have a communion with people from outside. You, for example, the associate, you have a good moment with them. And I like and I have a lesson from you. Another, when I see you, you have a hurry with Congo. You look how you can do to help Congo for your prayer, for sharing. Thank you. And thank you for your prayers. The charism is progressing in Congo. I'm very happy because you teach us how you walk to win a living. God bless you.
I'm glad I'm doing the prayer because that's a little hard to follow. Wrong side. I found this writing by Jan Phillips, which seems that it might relate to the direction in which we go. And so just listen to the words. How will we know how strong we are until our strength is tested? How will we know how deep we are until turmoil breaks our surface and forces us to dive? How will we know what sleeps inside until our whole of it is challenged to wake up? Then we'll turn inside to gather our resources, our untapped reserves of strengths and blessings, and rise like the sun, amazed by our own brightness, stronger than ever. Help us to know.
Lisa has heard from almost all of the far-flung places, and they've all been connected. So that's very encouraging that we were able to connect with everyone in our community through this way. Also, Sister Elizabeth Winberg from Canada had contacted us last week and asked if they could listen to this. This whole videotaping is actually on YouTube. And so you just have to have the number to get it off of YouTube. So we have heard from Elizabeth and Helene and some of the sisters in Canada. So even though they have not done their process, they have listened to us today. So to say it's been great to be together today. And as we move forward, we'll be sharing more with you about the chapter and the recommendations. The process and the timeline for this will come from the Congregational Council. This is their work being passed on to us and then returned back to them. Thank you to the people who've helped make this community sharing possible, and to each of you for your participation, which is yet to come, some of it anyway. We hope you have a good discussion in your area, and we look forward to your responses to the 2 questions. You will send them to Val by November 25th. Either hand them off to her today or send them through email, and then we will forward them to the Congregational Council. So in just a moment, the live stream is going to go off, and everyone is going to meet in their groups wherever they are. So any final anything? So enjoy your time together, and the technology is going off.